My name is Heather Upton, and at 34, I had stood in rooms most people only see on the news. None of them scared me the way my father's retirement party did. He raised a glass to his talented children, then pointed across the ballroom at me and told me to leave before I embarrassed him. 200 people heard it. A few of them laughed. What happened 40 seconds after he set that microphone down is the reason I am telling you this. Because the next voice in that room was not mine, and it did not belong to anyone in my family. Leave before you embarrass me. Those were the last words my father ever said to me as a stranger. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, where the quiet ones finally get the last word, and dignity does the talking. If you have ever been underestimated by the people who should have known you best, you are going to feel this one. Drop a comment and be sure to subscribe, because the moment my father stopped smiling is coming, and I want you in the room when it does. I drove 50 minutes from my place near Fort Meade to the Ashford Club that evening, and I spent most of it talking myself into staying an hour. The dress felt wrong on me. I have worn the same boots in 3 countries, and a borrowed gown made me feel like a costume of myself. Under the neckline, on a worn chain, I wore my grandfather's dog tags. Pop. Sergeant First Class Raymond Upton, 22 years in, gone 15 of them now. I touched the tags at the valet stand the way some people check for keys. My father is Walter Upton, and for most of his life he has measured people by what they earn. To my family, I was the daughter who joined the army and never came back right. They believed I sat at some desk, that I had never made rank, that I had thrown away every advantage the Upton name could buy. I had stopped correcting them years ago. The truth was none of their business, and most of it was not mine to share anyway. So I let the story stand. It was cheaper than the fight. I walked into a ballroom decorated for a man who had spent 30 years building rockets for the government, and 40 years building a wall between himself and his own father's memory. The chandeliers were the size of small cars. A string quartet played something soft and expensive. I told myself I would stay 1 hour, say a quiet goodbye to whatever was left between us, and drive back to Maryland before midnight. I lasted 40 minutes before my brother found me near the bar, and 40 minutes was already too long. There was no place card with my name at the front. There was a seat at table 11, in the back, between a retired comptroller and an empty chair. My name was missing from the printed program too, the one with a gold border and a photo of my father shaking hands with a senator. 3 talented children, the program said. It listed Brett. It listed Paige. It did not list me. I knew whose handwriting that was, even printed. My sister Paige runs the family foundation and curates the family's good name, the way other people garden. A soldier with no rank she could brag about did not fit the centerpiece. So I sat at table 11 and folded my hands and looked at the stage. People ask me why I came at all. The honest answer is that the date landed 3 days before the anniversary of Pop's death. And somewhere in me, a younger girl still believed that if she stood in the room long enough, her father might finally see her. The grown woman knew better. The grown woman had stopped a breach in the spring that nearly ended the company funding this very party, and she had not told a soul in this family, because they would not have understood the words and would not have believed the rank. I came to close a door, quietly, the way you close a door on a sleeping house. I did not come to make a scene. I sat there and watched a man I shared blood with shake every hand in the room, and I waited for the part of the night where he would pretend I was not in it. Brett found me before the salads came. My brother is 40, 6 years older than me, and he has spent 20 of those years as the son who stayed. He is a vice president at Voss Hartley now, with a corner office and a title that means he forwards other people's decisions upward. Still playing soldier? He said, and he smiled like it was affection. You clean up okay, Heather? For a grunt. I told him it was good to see him too. He leaned on the bar and told me about his quarter, his numbers, the deal that almost closed. He has always talked about himself the way nervous people talk, to keep anyone from getting a word in that might land. What he did not say, but what I could read on him like weather, was that he was watching the head table. The chairman of the company was at this party, and Brett wanted her to see him laughing at his father's right hand. "Dad's worried you'll feel out of place," he said. I told him you're used to roughing it. I asked him how the kids were. His daughter Maddie is 12. He waved the question off and checked his cufflinks. Later, I would learn that for years, Brett had been the one telling cousins and clients that his sister just enlisted, you know how she is, softening it like a man brushing dust off a suit. He needed me to be small. If our father ever decided I was something, the math of this family would change. And Brett had built his whole life on the old math. He clapped my shoulder, the way you pat a dog you are not sure of, and went to stand where the chairman could see him. My father moved through that room like a man walking the deck of a ship he owned. Walter Upton at 62 is silver and straight-backed, and good at the kind of warmth that costs nothing. He shook hands. He remembered names. He laughed at jokes 1 second before they landed, which is its own kind of power. He passed within 10 feet of table 11 and did not look at me, and that was not an accident. My father does not forget. He chooses. Across the room, near the head table, stood a small woman in a charcoal suit with white hair cut close to her head. People orbited her without crowding her. That was Margaret Voss, the founder and chairman of Voss Hartley, the woman whose name is on the building where my father spent 30 years. She was the reason the party had a senator in it. She watched the room more than she worked it. Once, for half a second, her eyes crossed mine, and something in her face paused, the way a word pauses on the tip of your tongue. Then a board member pulled her attention away and the moment closed. I thought nothing of it. I had a lot of practice thinking nothing of things. My father reached the head table and Margaret offered him both hands, and the photographer caught it. And the room glowed at the picture of a great man retiring well. He shook every hand in that ballroom that night. Mine he forgot on purpose, in front of 200 people. And the strange thing is, I almost respected the discipline of it. It takes effort to erase your own child so cleanly. He had been practicing my whole life. The first time I told him, I was 17, and we were standing in the kitchen in Wexford. I said I had applied to West Point. I said it the way you set down something fragile. My father did not yell. He set his coffee on the counter and looked at me like I had tracked mud across something clean. "You'll embarrass this family," he said. "Soldiers are people who run out of better options." Behind me, Pop made a sound in his throat. Pop had come for Sunday dinner in his good flannel, and he had spent 22 years in the army earning ribbons my father kept in a drawer he never opened. My father could not look at his own father without seeing a man who died in a rented room with a folded flag and almost nothing else. That was the wound. To Walter, the uniform meant poverty and absence, a man who was always somewhere else serving something that never paid him back. He had built a fortune to prove that life was a mistake. And here is his daughter, choosing the mistake on purpose, in his kitchen, with his father standing right there nodding. He never forgave the timing. I did not understand all of that at 17. I only knew that the man I wanted to make proud had already decided I was a disappointment, and that the only adult in the room who looked at me like I had done something brave was the one my father was ashamed of. Pop walked me out to my car that night. He pressed something cold into my hand and folded my fingers over it. I did not look at it until I was 3 miles down the road, and by then I was crying too hard to see it clearly anyway. Back at the party, the humiliations came small and steady, the way they always had. Paige floated over with 2 donors in tow and looked me up and down. "We weren't sure you'd come," she said. "In that?" One of the donors laughed politely. I smiled and told her the dress was borrowed, which was true, and that I was used to a uniform, which was also true, and I let the second sentence sit there long enough for the smarter donor to feel uncomfortable. Paige's smile tightened. She moved her donors along like a tour guide steering tourists past a closed exhibit. I did not chase her. You learn, in my line of work, that the loudest move is rarely the strong one. I want to stop here for a second. If you grew up being the family's footnote, the one they explain away at parties, you already know the arithmetic. You can be completely right and still be the smallest person in the room. You can be calm and have it called cold, be private and have it called arrogant, and there is no winning that argument while it is happening. So you stop arguing, you let them be wrong, and you keep your hands steady. Stay with me tonight because the arithmetic in that ballroom was about to change, and not because I changed it. Hit subscribe so you do not miss the turn. I went back to table 11 and drank water and watched my niece Maddie across the room, 12 years old in a dress she clearly hated, watching me back like I was the only interesting thing at her grandfather's whole party. I gave her a small salute. She lit up like a porch light. I went looking for a quiet hallway around 8 o'clock, the way I do at any event longer than an hour, just to stand somewhere no one is performing. I found one off the coat room, and I found my father and my brother already in it. They did not see me. My father had index cards in his hand. He was practicing the toast. Keep it about Brett and Paige, my brother was saying. The numbers, the foundation. People love that. My father nodded, flipping a card. And Heather? He asked, not warmly, just as a logistics problem. Brett laughed. Honestly, make a joke of it. Light? Something about her roughing it. People will love that too. Better than pretending she's not here. My father looked at the card, then at my brother, and I watched him decide something in the space of 2 seconds. Light, he agreed. I stepped back before the floorboard could give me away, and I walked to the bathroom and ran cold water over my wrists, an old trick for slowing your pulse before something hard. I had come to say a quiet goodbye. I had not planned on being a punchline in the closing remarks. I stood there and considered just leaving, slipping out the side before the speeches, driving back to Maryland with my dignity folded small and intact. That would have been the easy door. I have walked through a lot of easy doors in this family. Instead, I dried my hands and went back to table 11 and sat down, because some part of me, the 17-year-old part, wanted to be present for whatever my father had decided I was worth. I did not yet know what he was going to say. I only knew he had practiced it. Maddie escaped her mother and slid into the empty chair beside me before dessert. Are you really in the army? She whispered like it was contraband. I told her I was. She asked if I had ever flown a helicopter, and I told her no, but I had kept much more dangerous things in the air. She did not understand that, and she did not need to. She just wanted a grown-up at this party who was glad to see her. I was. We talked about her science fair, a project on encryption she had clearly been told not to bother explaining to anyone. I let her explain all of it. The bartender, an older man with a flat top and a Marine Corps ring, refilled my water without being asked, and gave me a small nod. One of those nods that crosses every branch and every war, and just means, I see you. He had clocked my posture an hour ago. People who served can always find each other in a room full of people who didn't. Around us, the dinner chatter carried fragments. I heard a man at the next table say something about the scare back in the spring, how Voss Hartley had nearly lost a government program, how it could have taken the whole division down with it. His table mate hushed him. That's all classified now, she said. They never said exactly what saved it. I kept my eyes on Maddie's drawing of a cipher wheel and did not change my face. I had a lot of practice not changing my face, but under the borrowed dress my grandfather's tags lay against my chest, and for 1 second they felt warmer than they were, the way the truth does, when it is sitting right next to people who will never guess it. I watched my brother work the room for the next 20 minutes, and it was a master class in quiet desperation. Brett does not love our father. Brett needs our father, which is a different and heavier thing. Every laugh he placed, every hand he gripped 2 beats too long, was aimed at the head table, at Margaret Voss, who had not yet decided whether the son was anything more than the father's shadow. He brought her a drink she did not ask for. He name-dropped a contract she had personally killed. She thanked him with the precise politeness powerful people use to end conversations, and he did not notice he had been dismissed. I almost felt for him. Almost. Because I also watched him intercept a cousin who had asked, innocently, what exactly I did over there. I watched my brother answer for me. Heather? Enlisted. Years ago. bounced around. You know how she is. Never really found her footing. He said it kindly. That was the worst part. He said it the way you describe a relative's bad luck. And the cousin nodded, sympathetic. And the story of me got told one more time by a man who had never once asked me a real question about my life. He had been narrating me to this family for 2 decades. And I had let him. Because correcting him meant explaining a job I was not allowed to explain, to people who had already chosen the simpler version. Brett straightened his jacket and headed for the stage area where my father was checking the microphone. He wanted to be in the photographs. He wanted to be standing close when the great man spoke. He got his wish. And it is the only thing that night that went the way he planned. Let me tell you what they thought I threw away, and what it actually cost. West Point does not care whose daughter you are. I arrived at 18 with a duffel and a chip on my shoulder, and got both knocked flat by the end of the first summer. I learned that I was not special, which is the most useful thing anyone ever taught me. I commissioned at 22. I spent my 20s learning a trade that lives in rooms with no windows, the kind of work where the wins are invisible, and the losses are someone else's funeral. I missed 2 of those funerals because I could not say where I was. I miss birthdays. I miss the slow years where you are supposed to build the small, ordinary closeness that families run on. And I did not get to explain why. And after a while, the not explaining became a habit. And the habit became a wall. Major comes around the 10-year mark if the boards like you, sometimes sooner. The boards liked me. I did not call home to announce it. By then, a phone call to Wexford was a transaction, not a comfort. And I had learned to let people be wrong about me because the truth required clearances none of them held. My weakness, if you want the honest one, is that I carry too much alone, and call it strength. I had turned silence into a fortress and then been surprised that it was lonely inside. So no, I did not lose my footing. I planted it somewhere they could not see, in service they were not cleared to know about. And I let my own family bury the woman I actually was, under a story that was easier for everyone but me. That is the part I am not proud of. Earlier that afternoon, before the club, I had stopped by the house in Wexford. Paige had asked me to pick up a framed photo of our father she wanted on the gift table, and asking me to fetch things is how my sister includes me. The house was the same and smaller, the way childhood houses always are. I let myself in with the key under the 3rd flower pot, the one that has been there since I was 9. The gift photo was on the mantel, beside the Warren family Bible my mother used to read at the kitchen table while she waited up for him. My mother, Carol Upton, gone 18 years, breast cancer when I was 16, and still thought my father might come around. I picked up the Bible without meaning to, just to feel the weight of her in it, and a folded sheet of paper slid out from the back and landed on the carpet. My name was on the outside in her handwriting. Heather. Not Brett. Not Paige. Heather. In the careful cursive she used when she wanted to be sure I would listen. I stood in my dead mother's living room holding a letter I had never seen, with one foot already turned toward the party I did not want to attend, and I almost put it back. Almost. I told myself I would read it later. I told myself a lot of things in that quiet house. In the end, I folded it once more, tucked it into my clutch, and carried it with me to the Ashford Club without opening it, because some part of me knew that whatever my mother had needed to tell me, she had needed to tell me badly enough to hide it where only grief would find it. The speeches were getting close. You could feel it in the room, the way conversation thins out before a storm. Paige used the lull to take one more pass at me. This time with an audience of 3 foundation donors she clearly wanted to impress with her grace under family strain. We're just so glad Heather could make time, she announced. Between her, what is it now? Her postings. She made postings sound like odd jobs. Some of us built things you can actually see. One donor chuckled. The other 2 did not, because the other 2 had been watching me for 10 minutes. And could not quite place why the quiet woman at table 11 held herself like she owned the floor. I set down my water. It's a beautiful party, Paige, I said. You did a wonderful job hiding me at the back. Most people couldn't make it look this effortless. It was not cruel. It was just true, said evenly, and the smarter of the two silent donors actually laughed. A real one, surprised out of her. Paige's color rose. She gathered her people and left. And across the ballroom, near the head table, Margaret Voss was watching the whole small exchange over the rim of her glass, her head tilted half an inch, the way you tilt your head at a name you are trying to remember. I did not see it then. I was busy keeping my own pulse flat, and my own hands still, and reminding myself that I had come to close a door, not to win a room. But Margaret Voss had spent 40 years reading people for a living, and something about the soldier at the back table had begun, very quietly, to bother her. I slipped out to the same quiet hallway before the toast, and this time it was empty, and I opened my mother's letter. I will not give you every word. I will give you the one that mattered. She wrote it in the last spring she was alive, when I was 16 and applying, and she had hidden it, because she could not bring herself to say it out loud while she was dying. My darling, she wrote, I need you to know the truth, before you decide who your father is. The first time you went up for a nomination, you did not simply come up short. Your father saw to it. He called an old friend in Congressman Reyes's office, and told them, quietly, that his own daughter was not officer material, and would shame the family in a uniform. And so that office's nomination went to another candidate. Reyes admitted it to me himself, because he could not look me in the eye at church. I did the only thing I could. I went to your grandfather. Pop drove you to the second interview, the one before Senator Dwyer's panel, the nomination your father never thought to block. And that is the one that carried you into West Point. I read that paragraph 4 times in a hallway off a coat room, while my father practiced calling me a disappointment 2 doors down. So it was not contempt. It was sabotage. He had not merely doubted me, he had reached into my life at 17 and tried to close the door with his own hand, and I had pried it open anyway, without ever knowing he was the one holding it shut. My mother's last line was simple. The right people will always know what you are, she wrote. And your grandfather was the rightest person I ever knew. I closed my hand around Pop's tags through the fabric of the dress. The right people always know what you are. The wrong ones never will. He had said almost those exact words the night he pressed these tags into my hand. My mother had been quoting him. I stood in that hallway holding 2 dead people's faith in me, and I understood finally. What I was going to do with it. Nothing. I was going to do nothing, and I was going to do it on purpose. Here's what I mean by nothing. I had a letter in my hand that could have detonated my father's whole evening. I could have walked to that microphone, read 3 sentences, and watched a great man's retirement dinner collapse, in front of his chairman and his senator and his 200 admirers. It would have been deserved. It would also have been his weapon, not mine. My father wins by humiliating people in public. That is his only move, and it has worked his entire life, because everyone around him is too polite or too dependent to make him pay for it. If I picked up that same weapon, I would just be a louder version of him, and Pop did not raise a louder version of Walter Upton. So I decided to let the toast happen. I would let him say whatever he had practiced. I would stand, and I would gather my coat, and I would leave with my spine straight and my mouth shut. And I would drive back to Maryland knowing the truth even if no one in that room ever did. The letter would stay in my clutch. If you are waiting for me to tell you I marched up there and ended him, I didn't. I am not built that way. And maybe you are not either. The quiet road costs more, and it feels like losing right up until the second it doesn't. Stay with me. Subscribe, because in about 4 minutes, 1 word from the right person is going to do what I refuse to do for myself. I folded the letter, returned to table 11, and squared my shoulders. My father stepped to the microphone. The quartet stopped. Somebody dinged a fork against crystal. 200 faces turned toward the man of the hour, and I made myself small and ready in my back row seat. My father is good at the start of a speech. He thanked the room. He thanked Voss heartily. He found Margaret Voss at the head table and gave her a bow that managed to look both humble and proprietary, a man honoring the queen of a country he half believed he had built. Margaret nodded back, unreadable. Brad had positioned himself 10 feet from the stage, slightly turned so the photographer could catch him beaming up at his father. Paige stood near the foundation banner she had paid to have printed. The whole family was arranged like a portrait. And I noticed, with the flat clarity I get before hard things, that the portrait had been composed to have exactly enough uptons in it, and not one more. My father talked about 30 years of service to the company, and I heard the word service, and thought about how differently he and I used it. To him it meant time given to a balance sheet. To me, it meant the windowless rooms and the funerals I missed. He talked about legacy. He gestured to the gift table where Paige's framed photo of him sat, the one I had carried in from Wexford that afternoon, and the small joke the universe was playing landed only on me. I had fetched the centerpiece of my own erasure. He talked about his children, and the room leaned in, because everyone loves the part of the speech where the great man goes soft. I watched his eyes begin to move across the tables. I knew the arc they would take. I had a lifetime of practice predicting exactly when my father's gaze would skip over me, and I waited for the skip, and I told myself it would be a relief when it came. I am a lucky man, my father said, because I am proud of my children. He started with Brett. He called my brother the future of the division, a leader, a builder, the steady hand the company would lean on for the next 30 years. Brett's face did something complicated and grateful that I had not seen since we were kids, and for one ugly second I understood exactly why he had spent 20 years narrating me small. He was starving too. He had just been starving at a fuller table. My father moved to Paige. He praised the foundation, the galas, the millions raised, the family name carried into rooms that mattered. Paige pressed a hand to her chest and let one elegant tear sit at the corner of her eye, without falling, which is a skill. The donors applauded. The senator applauded. 200 people glowed in the warm bath of a father loving his children out loud, and it was lovely. And it was real for everyone in that room, except the one person it was about to skip. I felt the skip coming the way you feel a wave before it lifts you. His eyes had crossed Brett, lingered on Paige, and now they were moving again, toward the back, toward table 11. And I made the small internal preparation you make, to not flinch. He would smile past me. He would say something about being blessed and raise his glass, and that would be that. I would stand in the applause and slip out the side and be on the highway before the cake was cut. I had it all planned, the way I plan everything. And then my father's eyes did not skip. They stopped. They found me, and they held. And he smiled the particular smile he saves for the moment before he swings. I want to be precise about what happened, because for a long time afterward people described it to me wrong, softer than it was, and the softening is its own insult. My father looked directly at me from the stage, in front of 200 people, and he decided. You could see the decision land. Brett, 10 feet away, gave a small nod, the same nod from the rehearsal in the hallway. Light. Make a joke of it. My father lifted his chin. He had a choice between the easy mercy of skipping me and the cheap laugh of using me, and he chose the laugh, because the laugh would play better in the room, because a man retiring on top wants the crowd warm, and a warm crowd will laugh at almost anything if a confident man offers it. He angled the microphone. The motion was small, and it changed the temperature of the whole ballroom. People who had been smiling at a father's love began, without knowing why, to brace. The bartender with the marine ring went still behind the bar. Maddie, beside her mother now, looked from her grandfather to me and back, 12 years old and already smarter than the room. Margaret Voss set down her glass. I sat very straight at table 11 with my mother's letter in my clutch, and my grandfather's tags against my chest, and I thought, with the calm, you are in the hard way. All right. Say it. Whatever you practiced. Say it, and let me go. My father opened his mouth. The quartet did not play. The forks did not ding. The most expensive room I had ever sat in went quiet enough to hear the ice settle in 200 glasses, and my father, smiling, lifted his hand and pointed it across all of them, straight at me. "I am proud to have such talented children," my father said, and let the warmth hang there one more beat, and then he tipped his head toward the table 11. "Except for that low-ranked soldier in the back." A ripple went through the room, the uneasy sound a crowd makes when it is not sure yet whether something is a joke. He gave them permission. He smiled wider. "My youngest. We don't talk about her career much. Because, well," he spread his hands, comic, helpless. "There isn't much to talk about. Some of us build companies. Some of us play soldier." A few people laughed. Not most. But a few, the ones who always laugh for the powerful man. And a few is all you need to turn a cruelty into a moment. Then he looked at me, and the smile thinned to something I had known my whole life. And he said the part he had practiced. The part that was not a joke at all. "Do us both a favor, sweetheart. Leave before you embarrass me." There it was. The same sentence from the kitchen in Wexford. 17 years polished, delivered now to 200 witnesses and a live microphone. "Leave before you embarrass me." I felt every eye in the room swing to the back to watch the low-ranked soldier absorb it. "I want to tell you it did not land. It landed. I am not made of stone. And a thing your father has been telling you since you were a girl does not stop having teeth just because you outranked your fear of it years ago." For 1 second, the 17-year-old in me reached for her coat to run. But I am not 17. I am a major in the United States Army, and I have stood in rooms where the cost of losing my composure was measured in lives, and a ballroom full of strangers was not going to be the thing that broke a discipline that war could not. So I did not flinch, and I did not weep, and I did not fire back. I set my napkin on the table, folded once, and I stood up to leave with my spine straight, exactly as I had planned, ready to give my father the clean exit he had asked for. Standing up in that silence was the longest walk I never took. I reached for my coat on the back of the chair. The room watched me do it. My father, satisfied, had already half turned back to the rest of his notes. The matter handled, the daughter dispatched. The crowd hissed again. Brett's shoulders dropped in relief. The danger passed. The old math intact. His sister leaving small the way she was supposed to. Paige found something fascinating in her own hands. The 2 donors who had laughed at the dress were not laughing now, and the bartender's jaw was tight, and Maddie had both hands pressed over her mouth. Nobody said anything. That is the thing people get wrong about public cruelty. They imagine someone always stands up for you. Usually no one does. Usually the room just lets it happen, because the powerful man is the one signing the checks and renewing the contracts and inviting them to the next party. And your dignity is not worth their discomfort. I knew that. I had counted on it. I got my coat over my arm and I lifted my chin and I took my first step toward the side door, planning to be gone before he reached the next index card, planning to drive north in the dark and let this be the last family event of my life. I had made it exactly 1.5 steps. My hand was on the strap of my clutch. And into the dead quiet of that ballroom, from the direction of the head table, from a woman who answered to no one in that building, came a single word, low and clear and absolutely certain. The kind of word that stops a room not by volume, but by weight. Wait. Margaret Voss was on her feet. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. When the chairman of the company stands up during the guest of honor's toast, every head in the room turns, and every head turned. My father turned too, the smile still half on his face, the index card still in his hand, a man who did not yet understand that the floor had shifted under him. Margaret was not looking at him. She was looking at me, across the whole length of that ballroom, with the focused stillness of someone matching a face to a file. She took 2 steps away from the head table. "I'm sorry," she said, into the silence, to me. "I have been trying to place you all evening." She tilted her head that last half-inch. "Stand in the light a moment, would you?" I did. I did not know why yet. The chandelier caught me and she studied my face the way you study a photograph you have seen before, in a very different context. In a briefing room, Maybe, or at the bottom of a report stamped in red. Her eyes widened, just slightly, and something moved across her face that I can only describe as recognition arriving all at once. "I know you," she said softly, and then, louder, clear enough to reach table 11 and the stage and the senator and every single person who had just watched my father call me a low-ranked soldier. "You're Major Upton." The room did not gasp. It did something quieter and worse for my father. It froze. 200 people held still in the exact instant of understanding that the woman at the back table, the embarrassment, the punchline, shared a last name with the man at the microphone, and that the chairman of the company had just called her Major. My father's hand opened. The microphone hit the floor. The feedback squeal from the dropped mic was the only sound for 3 full seconds. Margaret Voss did not enjoy them the way I might have, in her place. She just walked toward me, unhurried, until she was close enough to speak without performing, though the whole room strained to hear. "Major Heather Upton," she said. "Spring of this year, the intrusion into the Sentinel program." She watched my face for confirmation, and because she had earned the truth and my father had not, I gave her a small nod. "I was briefed personally," she told the room, turning now so they could all hear it. "We were 9 minutes from losing a classified federal program that this division has staked its entire future on. If that program had been compromised, Voss Hartley does not survive the year. 2,000 jobs, this building, that pension you are all here to celebrate." She let it sit. The work was sealed at the time. The names came to a few of us later in a closed briefing. A name and a service photograph I have apparently been carrying in the back of my mind all evening. I sat in the room when the general told us a small team had caught it, contained it, and traced it back, and that the officer who led that team had refused the public credit because the mission still mattered more than the medal. She looked at me. "That was you." It was not a question. I held her eyes, and I said the only thing the moment required, evenly, with no drama in it at all. "It was my team, ma'am. I had the privilege of leading them. That was all." No flourish, no turn toward my father. I did not point at anyone. I did not raise my voice or my mother's letter. I simply confirmed a true thing to the one person in the room who had a right to know it. And the truth did the rest. The way the truth does, when it finally gets a witness with enough weight to make it stick. I have watched rooms change fast in my career, but I had never watched one resort itself around a single sentence the way that ballroom did. 200 people were quietly rewriting the entire evening in their heads. The low-ranked soldier was the officer who had saved the company funding the party. The embarrassment was the reason the man at the microphone still had a pension to retire on. The donors who had laughed at my dress would not meet my eyes. The senator was leaning toward an aide asking a question. And my family. My father stood beside the fallen microphone with his mouth slightly open, and for the first time in my life I watched Walter Upton be unable to find the next thing to say. Brett had gone the color of paper. His whole net worth in this family was built on me being nothing, and the foundation had just dropped out of his sky in front of the exact woman he had spent all night trying to impress. He looked at Margaret Voss and understood that she now knew his sister had saved the company while he forwarded memos, and you could see the math of his entire life recalculating behind his eyes. Paige had both hands at her mouth. Maddie, my 12-year-old niece, was crying and grinning at the same time, the way kids do when the right thing finally happens and they do not have the words for it. And I stood there in my borrowed dress, perfectly calm, my coat still over my arm, and felt the strangest thing, not triumph. The room expected triumph from me, was braced for me to finally let them all have it. I did not want to. I had stopped needing this room's opinion a long time ago. I just stood in the light my mother had promised me, and I let them see me, and that was enough. Here was the moment I had been handed, the one the whole room was waiting for me to take. I had the letter in my clutch. I had my father stunned and silent for the first time in his life. I had 200 witnesses and the chairman of his company standing at my shoulder. I could have read 3 sentences of my mother's handwriting and ended him completely. I could have told them all that he tried to keep his own daughter out of the academy at 17, that the man being honored for a lifetime of building had once spent a phone call trying to tear something down. The room would have devoured it. He would never have recovered. And I looked at my father across that frozen ballroom, at the index cards going soft in his hand, and I decided, again, to do nothing with the weapon. Not out of mercy. He had not earned mercy. I did it because of a thing my grandfather told me the night he pressed these tags into my 17-year-old hand, idling at the curb while my father refused to come out of the house. The right people always know what you are, Pop said. The wrong ones never will. So stop spending your life trying to convince the wrong ones. He was right. Margaret Voss had known me in 9 seconds. My father had not known me in 34 years, and reading him a letter would not change that. It would only make me the loudest person in the room, which is the one thing I have spent my whole life refusing to be. So I did not reach for the letter. I turned instead to the chairman and I said, quiet enough that he had to strain to hear it from the stage, "Thank you, ma'am, but I think I'll still be going." My father found his voice when he heard me say I was leaving, and it came out wrong, scrambling, a man grabbing for a railing that was no longer there. "Heather, wait, now hold on." He set down the cards. He came toward the edge of the stage with both hands out, and the warmth was back on his face, except now it was desperate. And desperate warmth on Walter Upton looks like nothing I had ever seen. Folks, I think there's been a misunderstanding," he said, reaching for the room, reaching for control. Of course I'm proud of her. My daughter the major. I was. That was just a little family ribbing. You know how we are. He laughed, and it cracked. No one laughed with him. He turned to Margaret Voss like a man appealing to a judge. "She gets her grit from me, Margaret," I always told her. I always pushed her to be tough. That was the moment he tried to fold me into his own glory, to make my rank a thing he had forged, to stand in the light I had earned and call it his workmanship. And his voice kept rising because the room would not give him the warmth back. And the more it stayed cold, the louder and faster he got. Insisting, explaining, reaching. A great man coming apart at the seams of his own retirement in front of everyone he had invited to watch him win. I stood completely still through all of it. That is the part I want you to hear. He got louder, and I got quieter. And somewhere in the middle, the power in that room crossed over from the man with the microphone to the woman with the coat over her arm. And everybody felt it cross even if they could not have named the second it happened. I closed my hand around my grandfather's tags through the fabric of my dress, the metal warm now from being against me all night, and I waited for my father to run out of words. It did not take long. They had never been his strength. They had only ever been his weapon. When my father finally stopped, breathing hard, the room waited for me. I let the quiet sit one more beat, because I had learned from Margaret Voss that you do not need volume when you have weight. "Dad?" I said. Just that. First. And it carried to every corner because the room was that silent. "You spent 30 years telling this family that a uniform meant a person ran out of better options." I kept my voice level, conversational almost. "The way you talk to someone you have stopped being afraid of." I didn't run out of options. I chose this one. I chose it at 17, in your kitchen, while you told me I'd embarrass you. And I have chosen it every single day since, in rooms you will never have the clearance to hear about. He started to speak, and I did not raise my voice. I just kept going, and the not raising was what stopped him. "You tried to take it from me once. I know that now. And I made it anyway." I let that one land. Soft, no letter, no names, no evidence waved in the air, just a quiet, true sentence dropped into the space between us. Enough that he knew exactly what I meant, and the room only knew that it meant something. His face told everyone the rest. "So no," I said. "I won't stand up here and be your grit. I won't be the daughter you finally noticed the minute she turned useful in front of your boss." And then I said the thing I had been carrying toward this room my whole life without knowing it. I didn't come to be claimed. I came to say goodbye, and I'm glad I got to do it with the lights on. I picked up my clutch with my mother's letter still folded inside, unread to all of them. Mine. My father reached the edge of the stage with my name in his mouth and nothing behind it. And for once in my life, I did not wait to see if he would say it right. Margaret Voss spoke once more before I went, and she did it for the room, not for me. "Major Upton," she said, and she said the rank slowly so everyone could hear it set into place like a bolt. "On behalf of a company you will never be allowed to take public credit for saving. Thank you for your service. The door is always open at Voss Hartley. Though I suspect," she added with the driest glance toward the stage, "you outrank most of the offers in this room." A few people laughed, and this time it was real, and it was not at me. The senator stood and shook my hand on my way past his table, briefly, the way men in his position acknowledge something they cannot put on the record. The two donors who had laughed at my dress now wanted to talk to me, and I let them not get the chance. Brett did not move from his spot 10 feet from the stage. He had spent the whole night trying to be standing close when the great man spoke, and he had gotten his wish. And now he was simply the man standing closest to the wreckage. And the chairman had watched his sister save the company, while he carried her a drink she did not want. I almost felt for him. And my father. As I came level with the stage, I looked at him one last time, and for half a second the great man's face fell all the way open, and underneath it I saw a boy. I saw the boy who had stood at the edge of a rented room beside a folded flag and almost nothing else, who had decided that day that the uniform took everything and gave back nothing, and who had spent the rest of his life proving it true so he would never have to grieve it. I understood him in that half second. I want to be honest with you. Understanding him did not make me forgive him, and it did not make me stay. It just made the leaving quieter. Then the half second closed, and his face shut again, and he was only my father, alone on a stage with a dropped microphone. I did not storm out. People expect the storm, and there was no storm in me. I walked the length of that ballroom at the pace I would walk anywhere, past table 11 where my water glass still sweated, past the gift table with Paige's framed photo of the man of the hour, past the bartender who came to attention behind his bar and held it until I had passed. One old soldier saluting another with the only thing he had. I stopped only once. Maddie had pulled free of her mother and run to the edge of the room, and she caught my hand, 12 years old, fierce, whispering, "Are you really a major?" I knelt down to her level the way Pop used to kneel down to mine. "Really," I said. "And you're really good at encryption, so finish that science project." She nodded hard, like I had given her an order, and I suppose I had. I straightened up. Margaret Voss caught my eye across the room and gave me one short nod, peer to peer, and I returned it. My father said my name once more from the stage, softer this time, almost a question. I did not turn around. I had spent 34 years turning around for that voice. The door to the Ashford Club was heavy and cold, and it opened onto a parking lot full of ordinary cars, and the night air hit me, and it was just air, clean and quiet and free of all of them. I found my car. I set my mother's letter on the passenger seat where I could see it. And I drove north, toward Maryland, toward my own small life that no one in that room had ever bothered to understand. And for the first time I could remember, I did not feel small at all. The fallout was quieter than the movie's promise, and more permanent. My father's retirement did not get the soft golden ending he had planned. People remember that party now as the night Walter Upton humiliated the officer who saved the company, and you cannot unring that in a town where everyone golfs together. 2 of his oldest colleagues stopped returning his calls. Margaret Voss did not extend the consulting offer he had been quietly expecting. Brett's name came off the short list for the promotion he had been circling, because the chairman had seen, all in one evening, exactly how the brother spent his energy. None of that was my doing. I never said another word about any of them. They simply got measured finely, in front of the one person whose measurement counted, and they came up exactly as short as they always had. 3 weeks later, my father sent a text. It was 4 sentences, and none of them were the word sorry, but the last one said, "I didn't know about the Sentinel thing," which was true, and was also the whole problem, because he had never once asked. I wrote back 2 lines. I told him that if he ever wanted to know his daughter, the real one, the door was open, but that I would not be coming to be displayed, and I would not be coming to be apologized to in public to fix his image, honest and private or not at all. He has not answered yet. He might never. I made my peace with that on the drive north, somewhere around the state line, and the peace has held. You do not get to choose whether your father sees you. You only get to choose whether you keep waiting in the dark for him to turn on the light. I drove out to Pop's grave that next weekend, the way I do every year around the anniversary, with coffee for me and nothing for him, because he never wanted anything. It is a small stone in a veteran's section, flush with the grass, his name and his years and his rank, Sergeant First Class, a rank my father once called the proof of a wasted life. I sat in the grass and I told him what happened. I told him about the dropped microphone and the chairman and the word major landing in that frozen room. I told him I did not read the letter out loud, that I let the wrong people stay wrong, the way he taught me. I took the tags off my neck, the ones he pressed into my hand at 17, and I held them in the sun for a while, warm from being against me all those years. Then I put them back on. They were mine to carry a while longer. Maddie texts me now, about encryption, about which colleges have ROTC, about whether girls can really do what I do. I tell her the truth every time. Here is the only wisdom I have, and it is Pop's, not mine. So it is worth more than most things people say at the end of stories. I stopped needing my father to see me the day I finally understood that the people who loved me already had, and that the right ones always do, exactly when it costs the world something to keep looking away. That is my story. 1 microphone, 1 frozen room, and a father who never bothered to learn the rank of his own daughter. If someone in your life has decided who you are and stopped checking, you do not owe them the proof. Let them be wrong and let your work speak when it matters. If this reminded you of someone, share it with them. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.